Hello and welcome back. You're now watching the third episode of Consult Manasi web series, a series dedicated exclusively to the field of communication that touches upon journalism, PR, advertising, and marketing. Of course, includes digital media. I'm your host, Manasi. I'm a communication specialist, basically a digital marketing consultant and a social media coach. I'm also a guest faculty in a couple of colleges, and I'm a speaker for workshops, seminars, and other events that are related to communication. So before we start this episode, I would like to really make it clear that this is not a paid episode, and the content is the IP of Consult Mansi. The content should not be reproduced for commercial purposes, either partly or in full. This episode doesn't sell any product or services. The opinions discussed during the course of this episode is purely that of the guest and does not necessarily reflect on that of Consult Mansi's work culture, workings, vision, or mission. I'm very, very excited today because I have finally been I just managed to get my mentor on this show. Why a mentor? Because she literally introduced PR to me. She was the one who caught hold of me and said, "Hey, you want to be a PR professional?" And this was way back when I was with Perfect Relations. And she guided me through PR. She introduced PR to me. She literally handheld me in the field of PR. So I'm very excited about it. So we have with us none other than Miss Saleela Kappan, who is the founder and the CEO of Red Communications. Welcome, Saleela.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you for having me over on this.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
good
much.
evening. Good,
Good
yeah.
evening. Thank you so much, Saleela. I'm so grateful you made time for me. I'm sure you're super busy and you're so busy in this season, but I'm so glad you made time for me and you were able to come to this episode. Thank you so much for this.
No worries,
Okay.
anytime.
I'm going to unreveal a lot of things about Salila as we progress. There's a lot about her we're going to learn today. But I think we're going to start off with the industry perspective because that's what we were discussing when we just wanted to start the webinar. And there are so many things that Salila has pointed out that's happening right now. So the first section is about the industry, and we will start with that. So Salila, my first question to you is in the pandemic times that's it's happening right now, what exactly is PR today? What does it all actually encompass? What does it all have in itself?
See, if I have to talk about PR in today's context, not only from the pandemic point of view, but the PR landscape itself, uh, how it has changed or evolved in the last many years, to when we probably started off in the PR industry, say about the early 2000s, and to what it has become, and in the present scenario, right? It's changed a lot. It's basically gone more digital. It's gone into a totally digital landscape as such. As every other industry has changed, the PR industry has also changed quite vastly. And in terms of PR professionals per se, if you see, I think as per one of the studies by PRCI, the industry in itself, the PR industry in India itself, has grown by about 12% to reach about 1,600 crores in 2019. And it was expected to, of course, reach about 1,800 crores this year. But of course, with the slowdown and all that things, probably this will be postponed to next year as such. But with the advent of digital media in terms of your Facebook and your Twitter and LinkedIn, and of course your traditional media, PR is completely changed from what it was, from what we have learned to what it is now. It's more a multi-skilled role that PR professionals are looking at. Whereas when we began, it was more of we had our segments of a client servicing specialist or a media specialist or even a internal communication specialist as such. But now, if you see, you need to be more talented. I mean, as a multi skill role kind of thing, right? So yeah, I think that's what how the PR industry per se has changed.
Interesting. So it's more like a shift, a complete paradigm shift, and therefore the
Right.
multitasking and multi-talented bit comes in. So for the benefit of all of them who are viewing, okay, because digital media is here and everybody's on social media, I want to understand who is PR for? Okay, is it for individuals? Is it for organizations? Is it for brands? Whom is it exclusively for, or is it exclusive at all?
Uh, PR, as we understand, is in today's context, I think it's required for everybody, whether it is an individual, whether it's an organization, whether it is a brand, product, service. I think it is for everybody. And and now in today's world, with the onset of digital media as such, it is basically, the interaction between the audience and the client is a two-way communication, right? Earlier, the PR professionals were able to control what kind of messaging you want to send because you were primarily using traditional media, right? But now, with the advent of your social media or Twitter and LinkedIn, there is a two-way communication. Consumers can talk to the brand immediately, right? So everybody requires PR in today's world, right? Um, Even if you say, as in from an individual point of view, whether it is a politician, whether it is an actor, whether it is an artist, artist in terms of a performing artist or a painter, everybody requires PR to an extent. And I guess when you say PR, again, it's not only confined to your traditional media, it is across all platforms as such, right? And earlier, when we used to actually, design a communication strategy, one of the key things that we talk about is our audience. Who are we talking to, right? There used to be an internal audience and there used to be an external audience, right? The internal audience is your employees, is your, you can say clients, your clients, the brand, the clients, stakeholders, you can say. And then your external audience is anybody you wish, your consumers, your investors, right? Typically anybody who will buy your product or service. But but over the, one second. Yeah. So over a period of time, of course, this is somehow kind of merged. The internal and then external audience is kind of merged. And the communication strategy also. Typically, an agency earlier used to have, used to handle more of an external communications role, right? But now an agency, there is a lot of integration between the internal communications and the external communications. So a lot of it is also done by an agency. That's what the clients expect as such. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of work actually. That's a lot of work, but I think it also helps in brand standardization and communication standardization. There wouldn't be multiple messages going out, so I think that
Right,
makes
right.
sense to standardize
Yeah,
things.
because in today's context, I think the marketing managers and the PR professionals or the CopCom managers, everybody works together rather than in isolation. Earlier, the agency used to be like kept aside when all the decisions were taken, and only the final part of the, whether it is a launch of a product or a service or a press conference, only the last part the agency used to be involved. Now there is a lot more integration at the decision making level in itself. They involve the agency to a large extent. Yes.
Okay, so see, when we're looking at digital or social media, I think we do have complete control on what is being disseminated. But if you look at the
Right.
traditional media, I want to understand that it involves going to the journalist and pitching a story to them and asking them, would you be interested in writing about this? How approachable are the journalists in today's world?
Um, See, I have been in the industry like for a very long time now. So my perspective of how approachable a journalist is compared to somebody who's just joined the industry might be might be different, right? The way they relate to me, because they know a person who's been in the industry compared to somebody who is just a junior level, might be different. But if I have to, give a comparison from when I joined to now, I can say that the media has definitely changed. Okay, uh, you can say that probably now there is not much of face-to-face meetings, right? It's more done via emails and phone calls or even WhatsApp messages, right? In this during this last 3 months of pandemic is when I started sending press releases by WhatsApp, which I never used to do earlier, right? But situation calls for that a lot of them may not be on mails all the time, so this is probably an instant messaging service. Uh, and the topicality of news is such that if they need to capture the news, they need to actually immediately, we need to make sure that they immediately see what we're sending, right? So in terms of approachability, I would say for me it's been more or less the same, right? But the way we approach, one is it's not the face-to-face meetings anymore. It's more they prefer to come on calls or emails. And but with the social media scene, especially this Twitter culture, after it's caught on in the last, I can say last 2 years, 3 years, there has been some kind of a negative impact as well, right? There have been journalists who always feel a little superior to PR professionals, who basically call out PR people if they are unhappy with the way it is, something has gone wrong. If they are not, recently there was an episode where one of the influencers were not given some product for review, and he just tweeted about it, calling out the name of the person and the agency as such, which probably is not a great thing to do. But so approachability, one way it's become easier because of the social media as such. But as like a person like me who always preferred a face-to-face to know about them, it's just not about the story when you're talking to a journalist, right? It's about the relationship building. That's how we have actually cultivated our relationships over the years with all the media, and that stands. A person who I've met 20 years ago, I can still call up that person, and that person will have as much, it's a relationship which is built over a period of 20 years. So I would prefer that, but basically it's changed, and then we have to move with the time. So I guess, yeah.
Lovely. I mean, I'm glad that I'm speaking to you, who's got like what 20 years into this industry, almost. Yes. So I want to come to the next part. Where we've talked
Sure.
about the journalist relationship building. The next thing I want to ask you is, what are the things to keep in mind before pitching a story to the journalist in today's context? What do we really
Okay.
need to keep in mind?
Okay. So one of the things that I actually probably left out when you said in the beginning about PR, how it's evolved. It's see, earlier a PR professional means when you're hiring a person, you'd probably look at how a person is writing, his or her writing skills, presentation skills, and a positive outlook, and maybe a little bit of creativity as such. But now over the years, what's happened is with the social media and everything, you need to have strong a bent of mind to basically put a lot of time in research. Your analytical skill has to be good, right? Because we are living in this dynamic world where, as I said, when consumers can speak to your brands, one on one, you need to have your research. I mean, you need to go beyond your calling to find out things, you know um, immediately find out if there is anything that you've missed out, what is your competition doing, right? All the things. So when you say about sorry, the question was? Um,
What are the things to keep in mind if we're going to pitch a story?
yeah, right. So before you pitch a story, one, you need to do your research, right? To find out about the publication who you're pitching to, right? The journalist who you're going to talk to, in terms of what kind of stories is writing and what you're pitching. Is it something that his interest is? Because media has also become very, with the online media coming in, there are people who are very focused on some particular topics and they have a way of writing, right? And they know what their consumers are looking for. So even if you have a story to say, you can't just package the same way to every publication, right? You need to package it differently for a particular journalist, because this is the way he writes things and this is the way he relates to his audience. So you need to understand that. So that's what I said, your research is very important, right? Earlier, our seniors used to give us a press release or something and say, go and give it, right? That's what we used to do. I've had instances where people have in my earlier first year of my career, where journalists have taken the press release and thrown it in the dustbin right in front of me, because it's not relevant to them at all. It's not relevant. So that amount of research one has to do. Of course, the person whoever is handling the client will need to do that, even if you are, telling your junior to go and pitch a story. And a pitch note that we clearly make for every story that we are trying to pitch. We clearly put down, these are the points we're trying to capture, what we are trying to say, and that's how we go about it. So it's very important to know the publication and the journalist before you pitch a story, and accordingly design the story. Don't give the same story to everybody, especially people like your Times and ET and all that. Don't, even if they come for a typical press conference per se, they wouldn't want to take the news that we're giving out to everybody. They want something different, right? They want something, some added thing which they can actually convert into a different story and give it. That's how they look at. So accordingly we'll have to do that.
So scoops for everybody. That's what we're looking
Yeah.
at, even though
Yeah.
it's the same story. I think that also makes sense because they have their no niche audience, and they will want to write for them, and they have their own
Right.
style of presentation.
There's a lot
So
of competition with the online media coming in as well. Everybody needs to stand out. Everybody needs to say a different story. Yeah.
coming to that, what exactly is the biggest challenge that a PR professional faces in the PR industry today? That's one big challenge that is not going away and it's very difficult to solve or doesn't have a solution. Anything like that?
You're talking about from a PR agency perspective or a professional perspective?
Both, both.
See, from an agency perspective, I think which would probably go for any agency now in the country is finding the right talent, right? Getting the right people, is the biggest challenge for any agency in India today, actually, or I don't know about the world over. One is, of course, most of these entry level students, a lot of them don't want to spend a lot of time in training them, because there is high level of attrition. They learn skills in 6 months. You need a lot of handholding during that first 6 months, because you can't expect anything to come out of them at that point. So during that 6 months, either the kid can figure out whether he or she wants to stick around in PR or want to change and look at another industry per se, or the agencies who don't want to spend time training take them at a much higher level, they give them higher salary and take them. So the people who are the mid-sized and smaller agencies who try and invest time in taking these kids, to train them, are probably at a loss, because they keep having this problem over and over again. Finding the right talent and then training them and then retaining them, because there is a high attrition level at entry levels, in most agencies today as such. I think that is a big challenge. And of course, now there is also the skill that you're looking at. As I said, it's not only writing and presentation skills that you're looking at, right? You need to be good If not good, at least you should know, about a little about social media, digital media. All this also you need to actually know. So, of course, yes.
That's from an agency perspective. How about being a PR professional? As a professional, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced?
As a professional, what I have faced is, of course, one is media. Okay. As we were earlier discussing, media has also become very specialized in terms of, this is what we can carry and this is what we can't carry, and a lot of commercialization that is set into the media, right? uh, as you might know, probably Times of India started the trend of this media net kind of thing, where most of the supplements are on paid editorials per se, which is probably caught on with a lot of other publications as well. So a brand, especially if you're handling a retail client, a hospitality client, etc., unless there is business related news, right? If it is a brand building campaign and things like that, it's difficult for the media to pick it up. Uh, One is because of this, paid editorial mode as such, and nobody. Second is also nobody wants to just focus on a single story and give them that kind of a space. So they always look at trend stories. So you always need to find out. You need to be aware of what the competition is, so that you can come up with trend stories per se. So that is one, and second is also about. Keeping up with this social media change, right? Online. So you need to also, for probably the older lot of it who have not started their career with the social media as such, digital media, we need to actually also be, parallelly learning and upskill ourselves as well, right? So that, which actually you need to spend a significant amount of time. So so that is something I think the lockdown has all given us time now to learn new things as such. Yeah, so as a professional, I think these are things, and of course the client challenges will always be there, but that's something which I feel you can always handle and figure out. But media is going to be tough going forward, even more tough, I feel, with if there are lesser number of media, then everybody is competing for that small kind of space. There are so many of us competing for that space. So you need to be really good in telling the story. You need to have real good content, right? And you need to do your research. So
Awesome.
these are things that, yeah.
And those are a lot of challenges, actually. Those are a lot of challenges. I mean, that's like, challenges at every step. So you told about how it is really difficult to build a brand if that's the kind of story that you want to pitch. Okay, unless of course it's business. That's a different ball game altogether, is what you said. I want to understand what kind of stories sell today. I mean, and I want to include print, probably a little bit of radio and television also, plus the
Okay.
online world. So considering media as such, all the channels, what kind of stories actually sells? What kind of stories do people want to do today? What kind of stories do journalists want to talk about or be a part of?
See, journalists always, of course, one is this exclusive news coming from any brand, right? If there is something innovative being done, that is one story to go. Everybody wants that particular story to go. And human interest stories, right? Human interest stories, how the brand is being able to change somebody's life, or those are things that media actually likes to tell, right? I'm saying from a non-business perspective as such, when you're talking about a brand or a service. So that's something which media likes. Then I've also seen there is a lot of interest in art and culture and theater. These kind of stories probably gets picked up much faster than directly promoting a brand, right? So this is another interest. Then, of course, your regular CSR stories, social responsibility, initiatives that gets picked up. Now, otherwise, there is some breakthrough technologies, by any of the companies in terms of. And other thing, I think probably now it's kind of died down in the last 1.5, 2 years as such. But before that, there was a lot of interest in the startup community as such, right? So any and every startup, you might be aware that in Bangalore itself, the ET and Times and Business Line and all had like 2 or 3 pages, dedicated pages only for startup section as such, right? So they used to have the Bangalore team only focus on startups. So there's a lot of interest in startups as such. And there are some sectors, sitting in Bangalore, probably you can't pitch to anybody in Bangalore, like for an automobile sector. There's not much of, maybe because we don't have too many automobile companies in Bangalore, that the beat is not probably segregated here. But as I said, I think human interest sells art, culture, theater, student-related stuff, youngsters coming up with innovative ideas, startups. So these are the things that actually people tend to pick up faster. And of course there are your investor. If somebody invests a lot of money in some company, of course that gets picked up
easily. Right.
Yeah.
And during this pandemic times, I'm definitely sure that that's the first thing that they'll probably want to pick up. Somebody shelling money, that's something that they'll want to pick up.
During this time, I feel anybody hiring, that also makes news, because a lot of job losses, people are cutting staff here. But so anything on the contrary that is happening, that gets picked up actually fast. Yeah.
Fantastic. With that, we come to the end of section 1, where we talked about the industry. So, no, now I think it's time to move on to the kind of person that you are. Okay, I've worked with you. I have known you for 15 years now. That's a decade and a half, and you're a beautiful person. But I want to understand a little more, and I want this to be from you. I mean, I can talk about you, but then it's not you. So I want this to be from you, especially for people who are watching. So our second section is all about Saleela Kappan. So the first thing I want to ask you is, today you are a successful CEO of a very successful agency. It's a PR agency. What is your academic background?
Okay. So that is a complete diversification. Okay, I graduated in BSc, and physics, chemistry, and mathematics were my major subjects as such. Then I did my MBA in marketing, right? So I ventured into PR, I think purely by accident. It was not something which I had planned for. Of course, when I was doing my MBA, I also did a course in PR from Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. It was an evening 10-month course as such. But that's purely academic, and it has nothing to do with what we are doing today. Of course, it helps in some way, but that's the old school PR actually. What you learn and what you do in an agency is completely very different. Yeah, so pure accident that I ventured into PR as such, yes.
That's a message to everybody who is from different backgrounds and feel that they are good communicators. I think PR is a great field to get into. Saleela, I want to move to a little, a challenging topic, something that we have seen in terms of gender, okay? The gender bias part of it, or gender roles that's being played. How easy or difficult has it been for you as a woman in the industry?
To be honest, Manasi, I have, by design, I have tried not to get into the big league PR agencies as such, right? I wanted, I probably started off with full intention of being a boutique PR firm as such, with so that I can get my time, right? I can give personalized services for my clients rather than not venture out too much into a big agency and not keep a thing on the clients that we handle and give it to people to handle it, which I was not comfortable with. So in this context, I would say that I have not faced any kind of discrimination or anything at all, being a woman. Of course, it's not industry specific, but we all know that we all have our challenges, when it comes to some, one-off incidents here in clients or media and things like that. But I wouldn't say that it stopped me from doing, or growing as an agency or as a PR professional. No way at all. There has not been any kind of hindrance at all, right? I think probably my, when I started off my PR career per se, one of the first clients that I was just put into, I mean, I didn't know anything at all. I was just one fine day, my senior told me, you need to go for this. We used to handle Pernod Ricard as a client, and then we said that there are these promotions, you just need to go, right? And I had to land up there at like some 8:30 in the night and just be there hanging around till 10:30 and all that. And I mean, for me, it was like completely different thing. But then I didn't feel scared, or I didn't put up a fight saying that I can't go. I thought it was part of my job. And I think that kind of attitude is extremely important, to also not feel victimized. I don't know. Sometimes, I've heard of so many instances of people saying that they are victims of that and this, but I don't know. I somehow have not felt anything, because I guess I just adapted to whatever was given to me when I was learning, right? And that helped me actually. So, and now I'm probably, because of this, whatever decisions I took, if I don't like something or I'm not comfortable with something, I can walk away from it, right? So I don't have to put up with anything also. In case anything, I encounter anything, I don't have to put up with it. I just can just walk out and take my own decisions, right? Yeah.
Very interesting. Actually, I want to tell all those people who are, looking at this, who are watching this, the way Saleela has learned PR is exactly the way she mentored us as well. Of course, she has guided us. That's a different thing, because that's something that she has enabled us always. Okay, but she has always thrown us into a situation and asked us, "What will you do? How will you do it?" She's always done that, and I think that has made us capable. Of course, in the world of PR, but more so in our own lives as well. It's almost like, you can throw us anywhere on the streets, anywhere in the world, and we will survive. So that's one thing that Saleela has taught me, at least. So that's been really helpful, Saleela. And now that we've spoken about how you've been a PR professional and now you have a company of your own, have you never thought about getting into the corporate side? I mean, not just the corporate side. Have you never thought of getting back into journalism? Because I see that you've in your own family you've got journalists, right? So have you
Yeah.
not thought about either of these sides?
Journalism, no. I earlier in my career, I thought about advertising per se. But in fact, my first job was an advertising agency for about 3 months and such. But I realized very, early on that an advertising kind of a setup, if you want to get into the creative role, and you need to have that kind of a background, educational background. You need to have a Chitrakala Parishad degree and things like that. So even if you have a natural creative talent, but that's not acknowledged, you need to have an educational background and such. So advertising was the only thing that interested me, apart from PR. Of course, on the course of the job is what I actually liked, and because it just opened up my entire world. When you're studying, especially in a thing like a BSc physics chemistry, you're so much into the studies, and your world is just here, like confined to what you see and read. And that time there was no internet and all that. So PR basically opened up an entire new world for me. I mean, it was like completely different, and I learned so much from it. And I guess it's that experience with an agency where you get to learn so many things, because you're handling so many clients at one time, right? You learn about every industry. I mean, maybe you don't go deep into every industry, but you know so much, and you're reading so much. You are interacting with so many people. So for me to think of corporate communications and being confined to one office, one client, didn't appeal to me at all. I wanted I wanted that excitement, that feel that, every day. Yeah, and I think in perfect relations, when I was working initially for 5-6 years, every day we used to have a press meet or a product launch or something like that, right? So every day there is something to look forward. I mean, you're learning so much, and that and you're building relationships, you're networking. And I think the confidence of starting my own company came because of all that relationships and networks that I built in that 5-6 years in the beginning, right? So I didn't want to let go of that kind of a system and confine myself to one office and just sit with one team. No, I was not very, personally, I didn't feel that. And journalism, of course, was not my cup of tea. And because my brother is already there in journalism, and I'm good at writing, but I wouldn't say, I'm like a journalistic kind of writing as such. So no, that was never there in my mind.
Very nice. Um, I think Saleela has been a great leader when it comes to team building. Because, yes, I remember my days with her at Perfect Relations, and considering that Perfect Relations used to handle close to about 80, 90 companies at a time, let me tell you this.
Right.
It was crisis always. Okay, I mean, brand product launches is just one part of it, business deals and acquisitions, mergers, and giving out business news is one part of it. But
Right.
trust me, the kind of crisis we used to handle in that agency was amazing. And handling 60, 80 companies at a time, there was crisis always. So every day
Always,
was,
yeah,
yeah,
compounding
something new.
interest, right?
So I think
That was all a great experience. Actually, it was great learning.
it
Great
was
learning.
awesome. And I'll tell you what I learned being a part of her team. When Salila knew that somebody could do something, she would always delegate. And that is how I got to um, kind of meet CEOs. And there were times when, I mean, I was a newbie though, and at that time, CEOs would ask, "Do you think I should tell this, or do you think I should present it like this?" And it made me like, okay, it makes you really powerful and at the same time very accountable. Okay, so that's something that I learned very quickly being a part of that team. So I think it's been wonderful being associated with her over the years, and definitely working with her. So, Sarya, now that I've summed that part of it up, I want to ask you in today's context, okay, what skills do communicators require to run a successful agency such as Red Communication? I understand it's a boutique firm, but then it has got bigger challenges. If it was like, all firm, all PR firm, or all domains firm into the PR field, it was different. But as a boutique firm, you've got your own challenges. So, what skills do communicators require to run a successful agency like yours?
First one would be a tremendous amount of patience, a lot of patience, right? And when I started off from scratch. So basically, you need to have knowledge about anything and everything. It's not only you being a PR professional. You need to know about being a PR professional. When you're setting up an agency, you need to know about, from accounting to the technology part of it, in terms of setting up the office systems and all that, and taking even a simple scan and sending I mean, those days when you started up, they used to be, we'll send out fax and things like that. You have to learn everything, right? Because when you're starting off an agency, you probably might have people working for you, but in the absence of somebody, you need to be handling everything. So even when I hire anybody, the first thing I tell them is, learn everything. All that is basic. You might have somebody to check the papers or scan it or paste it and everything, but give it 1 month, pick up all of that skills yourself, because that's very basic. And because tomorrow, if you're in a situation where you need to go to the office at 8 in the night because you need to have send out an urgent thing, which has happened. you can't ask your person to come at that point and do it, right? You go yourself and do all these things, right? So starting from being an admin person to knowing the technology and setting up your systems, and then basic accounting, right? uh, so that nobody takes you for a ride, and then of course your skills as a PR professional. And when you're running an agency, of course, you need to be probably a good negotiator as well. You need to be able to convince your client that your time is what they are actually paying for, right? Your skills and your time is what they're paying for. And out of box thinking, right? Because there are situations when you suddenly come up with something, you need to actually just turnaround time will be probably just half a day and things like that. So you need to think on your toes all the time. You need to be a great crisis communication specialist, right? That is very important depending on the kind of industry vertical that your clients are in. Every other day, if you're in the hotel industry or a pharma company and things like that, there are crises every other day. So you need to be prepared. And you need to have a flexible mindset and the right attitude. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, a tremendous amount of patience, because some days you'll feel everything is falling apart. Everything is falling apart, right? I think that goes for everybody, any industry per se. But when you're running a company, you can't just let go and just, you just need to pick up yourself and then attend to it, make sure that everything goes right. And yeah, of course, when you're dealing with media as well, a lot of patience and a positive mindset is required. Yes.
A lot of skills that's required to be a successful person.
Yeah,
That's a
and in
lot.
today's world, of course, all your the social media analytical skills and everything is also part and parcel. You need to keep upgrading yourselves about. Yeah.
I think being a learner is something that
Yes.
is integral part of this. That's a lot of skills. So, Saleela, I want to understand, how does your day look like? Because it looks like crisis. It's look like multitasking and juggling on everything every day, every moment. So, how does your day look like?
Um, I start my day a little late because I'm a night person per se. So I start my day slightly late, around 10:30, 11 is when I land up in the office. And basically it's just firstly take stock of what, I mean, by morning, what kind of coverage has come for your clients. You get the, the messages and everything. You track what's happening in the client sector, and if there is any competition tracking and things like that, that has to be done. So typically morning goes off in that, and then you get to office and attend to your teams as to what the daily tasks are, and prioritize what needs to be done. And yeah, so basically typical day is in a week probably we'll have some 3 to 4 client meetings. I mean, at this is before the pandemic, before the lockdown started as such. I mean, a typical day would be like that. And as I said, I like to take things a little easy sometimes. So weekends, Fridays, I don't keep too many meetings per se. So I take time off to be with friends and family and things like that. And yeah, of course, but then all changes when there is an event and things like that, because a lot of times there are events and that happens over weekends. Especially when you are handling uh, events as in programs and festivals and things like that. If it's a music festival or it's a dance festival and things like that. So those mostly happens over weekends as such. So, but those are, we know much in advance what happens. Yeah.
Exceptions, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's quite a bit of what I've learned new things from you. I mean, as in, today I didn't know so much about you so far. So I'm glad I got to know you better. Okay, with that,
Great.
we come to this end of section two, where we have got to know
Okay.
who Saleela is. Okay, now for the benefit of everybody, as in, see, I started the series called Ask M series, where people come back to me with questions. I tell them well in advance that I'm going to probably speak to a person from the PR industry or the advertising industry or marketing industry, and they give me questions. Okay, so here are a couple of questions that they have asked when I said that, I'm going to speak to the person from the PR industry. So I'm going to give you three scenarios and you'll have to tell me what is it that they have to do. Okay, so here is scenario number one. A bunch of
Okay.
21-year-olds, okay, they start a stock trading company of their own. In 2020, they have a turnover of over 1 crore. Okay, now they're looking at PR to build their brand. How do they go about it?
Okay. So I'm assuming that the pandemic has not happened in 2020.
No, I think with the pandemic, they seem to have done really well. A bunch of 21
They,
year olds, so they would have figured out something.
okay. Okay. Right. So I could say that if they basically they objective is brand building per se. So the first thing I would probably suggest them is to go to an agency which is, I mean, of course, I'm assuming that they have the kind of budget to go with a agency which is probably an expert in financial PR per se, because they understand the audience better, who has worked with that kind of an audience before, and sit and design a PR strategy that will help them make their brand visible amongst their target audience in a scenario like today, where the pandemic, with the pandemic situation as such, the media that you can approach to at this point is also limited, and the kind of stories that are going on is also uh, probably very focused on COVID and you know in and around it as such. In such a situation, if they've done great, if they've done well, that is a great story to tell, right? And since I understand that the target audience will be more of the investor community. I mean, in terms of the people who are basically looking at stocks and looking at um, the companies which are doing great, the financial community as such. I would tell them to focus more on online news media, that is the new age media per se, right? Concentrate their efforts there. One is, of course, talking about their brand, right? Second is being 21 year olds. I could say that it's a great, it's like they're just out of college, right? So this is a great story to tell there from a startup point of view, right? So and these are things that media always likes. A bunch of friends putting hand around each other, standing and talking and giving interviews. This is what media likes as well. So approach online. One is of course the online media guys. Then for stories on the success story per se. Second is from a startup point of view in terms of each of they what do they each of them bring into the table, right? These are the story, or say I'm saying the talk points that I'm talking about, right? And then we also say about, I mean, we also look at call it as profiling stories per se for them, right? So these are things that we can look at, I mean, or rather I can suggest to them. And then of course it is also about I would say also some amount of direct interaction with their target audience through online media as such, right? In terms of advice, right? What should people be looking at in this pandemic, right? What should they be? Which are the companies that they should be probably which looks promising? These kind of things. And LinkedIn is a great platform for them to actually address. They can give their views, they can give their short blogs there as such, talking about the industry and things like that. I think a mix of online and traditional media should be incorporated into the brand building strategy as such. I think that's probably one way, at least for the first 6 months, I would suggest.
Wow, that's awesome. You just gave them everything that's required to start off with their PR. This is awesome. I mean, this would have cost them like a bomb if they went to a strategist or any PR agency to actually put this together. So that's free. That's what happens when you speak to good consultants and good people in the PR industry who give you free advices. There you go. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is there's a leading digital marketing consultant who's well known for the digital marketing courses. Okay, now
Okay.
this person has series of courses from social media till digital media, advertising, everything is covered. So they've got a series of courses. Now he is looking for PR, and he's got like a huge fan following in the online world. Okay, so what should this person do if they're looking at PR? And this is the first time they'll be venturing into it.
Okay. Um, as per the first scenario, this person actually is, you're saying he is like a well-renowned person in the digital media space,
Yes, people know him.
right? So one is he can position himself as a thought leader, right, in the industry. So one way of looking at it is he not talking directly about the marketing courses and things like that, about his institute or the courses, is basically establishing himself as a thought leader, right? So be seen, write articles, right? And the target media here that we would suggest is basically those which are catering to the marketing managers, the brand managers, and those kind of people, right? So the trade specific publications is where you will actually be talking. And these kind of people also, interview leaders from different industries as such, right? So that's a place to be seen. So, the agency should, whoever is, going to, should be able to suggest that he should be seen as a thought leader. He should be able to give interviews in these kind of forums, right? You should also look at forums in as a speaker in select forums, summits, brand summits, and things like that, where he can go and talk about. But if the objective is also about getting students for the marketing, for the courses as such, right? Then you will also need to get into um, uh, the traditional media as such, right? So here I see two things. One is profiling him as a thought leader in the industry, and since he is running this institute, people will come to him, right? That's one way. And second is you are talking about the courses and what the courses will actually help and how is it beneficial for the students and how is it going to actually help them in the industries that they're going to and things like that. So it should run parallelly. One is him as a thought leader. Second is visibility and awareness for the various courses that the institute is running, right? So use this for both, use the courses that you're trying to create visibility for both in the online and the traditional media space. Traditional media, when you talk about, there are these education supplements, you're right. For example, like an Indian Express edX and things like that, right? So we seen there. And there are a lot of online, I think, education for online websites as well. There are where people actually go and check out. So there are you're doing two things at one time. One is brand building for the person who's running the institute, and you are creating visibility and awareness for the courses. So these two things run parallelly, I think. Yeah, I think that's what I would suggest initially.
Perfect. It can't be more detailed than this. Okay, that's a lot of free advice going out today. Thanks for that, Saleela. Let me get you to the next scenario. There's a company that manufactures hand sanitizers. Their USP is they are approved by various well known bodies. And one of these in the product industry that contains 85% alcohol, which is actually a prerequisite to fight viruses like corona. How do they
Right,
go
right.
about this?
So I'm assuming that it's a product launch, right? I mean, it's a new product in the market,
I
and
think they
you're
have it for quite some time now. They have it for quite some time now. It's just that they've never done PR or social media in any way. They've just been into manufacturing
so
and they just
you
give it out.
basically here there is a scenario now we can actually talk about it because it is a topicality of the COVID situation right now, right?
Yes.
So one is any product launch per se, especially in a situation like this when you're talking about hand sanitizer, it becomes like very commercial, right? It becomes very commercial. So the media might not take it the way you want. It'll say, okay, you go advertise, you go talk about it in the media as an advertisement and things like that, pay and get it done. So what I would suggest for them is that you take the view of being a you run a social message campaign, right? You talk about being safe, right? You talk about how you should keep yourself safe, the various messages that you can send out, right, in terms of a pandemic which is going on, where you write this media campaign is brought to you by this particular hand sanitizer company, right? So you make the campaign so interesting, right, with a bit of humor and with a bit of creativity, that it gets picked up and talked about in the media space as well. Because if you see a lot of the media, they actually give a lot of visibility to these innovative campaigns that run, right? Especially if it is a social message that is going out to the media, so that gets picked up. So this can also be used, for the online digital media space, right? They can do a social media campaign on Facebook, and through you can make it go viral on WhatsApp and things like that. And you can also go make it go online, I mean on radio as well, to maybe radio, and of course radio and television will require that kind of a budget, but that is one way of looking at it. And second is, if you're saying that they are kind of quite well known, and the bodies who have endorsed them are like government bodies or whatever, you can also tie up with local BBMP, like we have a BBMP, right? Local corporations and such. You kind of associate with them in some way, where you can be largely seen at all these places wherever they're having meetings, in terms of, anybody who's coming, give them your hand sanitizer I mean, it should be very prominently displayed. So there is an immediate recall happening as such, right? Of course, this is not your typical PR per se, because this is a lot of PR and media and non-media activities, which is actually you require, because a typical product launch is not going to, through PR is not going to help like that, right? Because even if you see over a period of time that you see, earlier when we started off, there were a lot of these columns, product launch columns, that newspapers used to have, right? Now it's probably non-existent. Even in vernacular media, you probably don't see it at all. So product launches is no more important for any media as such now. You need to actually have a message to talk about it, related to your audience somehow. There has to be a message behind it. So I think you need to create a campaign based on that. That is what I would suggest for them.
Beautiful. Again, lot of free advices coming from a veteran in PR. All right. I think those are the scenarios that we wanted to talk about. With that, we complete section 3, and now we move on to the
Okay.
section 4. This is my favorite section. Okay. It's called the rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you to make a choice.
Okay. Right.
Okay, I'm going to make you. I'm going to ask you to make a choice between two things, and you'll have to be really quick in responding. Okay.
Okay. Do I get a reward?
Okay. Yes, we're going to meet up as soon as the pandemic is over.
Sure. I look forward.
Okay. So let's start with this. Shall we? Ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Deccan Herald or Times of India?
Deccan Herald.
Week or Outlook?
Week.
HBL or Economic Times?
Economic Times, though the heart says HBL.
Ad Factors PR or Ogilvy PR?
I think Ad Factors.
What works in the industry, common sense or intelligence?
Common sense.
What's your favorite when it comes to PR, product launch or press briefings?
Press briefings, I guess. Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Wow, cats. The dogs
You've
are
got
equally adorable.
nice. You've got 7 of those, right? 5 at home and 2 in the
Yeah.
office. Okay.
Yes, yes.
When it comes to acquisition, press release or story?
Stories, always.
Okay. When it comes to press briefings, hotels or press club?
Um, I think I'll go with hotels.
Okay.
Yeah, because it
Uh,
depends purely on the brands. Yeah.
all right. What kind of a person are you? Cars or bikes?
Uh, Cars.
Okay. I still remember the first time I sat in a Swift was that of Saleela. She bought a new car and she took us all on a round. The whole
Oh
team
yes,
went.
because
The whole team went and we had a fun. And the last one I want to ask is Saleela, curd rice or biryani?
oh God, how can you ask this? It's biryani all the way.
Lovely, absolutely lovely. Thank you. I think
Yeah.
that was really nice
You
and
can
that
ask
was quick.
chicken biryani or mutton biryani, right?
What's your favorite?
No, I go with chicken. Even though for biryani lovers, mutton is the biryani. Chicken is not considered as biryani at all.
Biryani at all.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Wow, that was quick and thank you. I think that gives me a little more insight into you, which I did not know quite a bit. I always thought you were a bike person and not a car person. Okay. So thank you for that. I think for that, we'll move on to the next section, which is a more serious section where we're talking about the future of the industry itself, the future of PR industry. So under that, my first question to you is, how do you think the PR industry will span out in the next 6 months?
PR industry in the next 6 months, considering the present scenario, I think, uh, of course, in terms of the client subsection as such, mm, maybe from the retail, hospitality, and lifestyle, uh, there would be probably considerably less work coming on, but there will be a lot of work from the technology startups, pharma, and financial sector, health sector, of course. And of course, even from the retail and hospitality, there will be, probably a lot of changes that will happen as such, right? Not the typical PR what we used to do earlier. So a lot of change in terms of um, some probably have already started looking at diversification and all that, right? So, in terms of from the PR industry perspective, I would say that a lot of them will be digital now. Okay, a lot of them will be digital. Also, because PR is, looking at media relations is a big part of uh, PR, right? And when you talk about media relations, even though there is a lot of interest in the online space as such, traditional media is also important. But then, because of the pandemic, the traditional media has been hit very, very badly. If you might know, right? There is a lot of layoffs that's happened. A lot of companies, a lot of media houses have shut shop, right? A lot of them have reduced their editions across. They've shut down all the tier 2 and tier 3 cities editions and such. So with respect to this, I think a lot of it has gone online now, right? So accordingly, we also have to adapt in terms of the PR professional. The industry per se has to adapt. So a lot of importance will be on non-media perspective also, right? I think PR agencies will start uh, getting into a lot of the. Um, I think we should also look at integrating our services with the internal communications, right, of the company. and trying to see how we can help the clients in terms of keep the dialogue going with the consumers, right? There has to be a constant engagement with the brand, right? And because if for example, if a resort or a hotel is shut shop, okay, from last 2-3 months, you are actually not corresponding with your audience at all in this 3 months, right? You've stopped talking to them in any way. So you need to actually you really look at that position and start looking at going back to the client saying that let's start talking to our brands, right? Let's keep them engaged in some way or the other, right? Maybe not through the regular way that we used to do, but let's talk, right? So that's important, I think. So we'll have to start rethinking how we can actually engage with our clients as well, right? Not I think we've already started actually, putting down our regular plans that we put for our clients. We've revisited that and changed as to what we can look at differently with the clients. What kind of stories can we tell now rather than the regular stories? What can we tell them? What ideas can we give our clients in terms of engaging with the audience, right? Keep talking, even if you are not providing the service. It's you need to actually at least have some kind of a campaign which shows that the brand cares, right? In a situation like this, the brand shows empathy. The messaging that they're giving out is authentic, right? So you need to come up with some ideas that can actually come up, help them with all these kind of messages. Yes.
Wow. A lot of things to be done from a PR agency perspective or a PR professional perspective for the brands, for the clients. And remember
Right.
this, as in, just like Saleela mentioned, engagement is the key. Ensuring that there is constant and consistent messaging is the key to keep in touch
Right.
and produce that engagement. So, Saleela, now that we've spoken about the PR agency or PR professional, the industry itself, what changes will you see from the other perspective, which is the media perspective? See, obviously, you said that they're going to shift to completely being digital, but I want to understand it from the perspective where you said that people are losing their jobs and editions are being shut down. So, what happens next in the media industry?
Media industry, I think, is also taking, as I said, because of less ad spend, a lot of things have changed, right? They are cutting down pages. They are, I think, even today I heard Prajavani is stopping all the supplements except for 1 or 2 supplements. They are shutting down all the supplements. So probably this is a temporary phenomenon. Okay, we're hoping that it'll all, once everything goes back to normal, so it or the new normal as they call it, it'll all come back. But as we see it right now, I think media journalists are also asked to expand their beats, right? In terms of if they were covering one particular beat, okay, with the number of people being asked to go, the people who are left with will have to probably again upskill whatever knowledge they have, and they will have to adapt again and cover more things, right? So that's one thing that I'm seeing, that probably this the so as I said that the lines might blur in terms of being one beat specific or something. People might be asked to report on related topics as such, and a lot of them might be also moved out to the digital part of the newspapers, right? Maybe that will take more importance now. And in terms of that part, we're probably still waiting and watching as to in terms of uh, because there is no space constraint in online media, right? So how how it'll turn out? Will there be more opportunities for us PR professional to pitch our stories, or will it be less? That's all to wait and watch. So also considering at present scenario is also that a lot of them have been asked to do their stories by like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. Cutoff time has been reduced, so we have to work faster, and we have to give, if we have something to talk to the media, we need to make sure that it reaches them faster during the day. So these are small things that are happening, small changes that has happened. But from a perspective, I think that a lot of the magazines might go out of circulation. I feel that that might go because it's difficult to sustain a magazine, unlike a newspaper, probably, right? So that, I think a lot of the lifestyle magazines have already shut shop actually. A lot of them have shut shop, yeah. So I don't know if it will get revived or not, but as of now, I don't think at least for the next 1 year it will come back. Even people like Forbes and Fortune and all that had stopped their print editions for 2-3 months actually. Yeah, so only the online editions were coming. So I think I don't know. I wouldn't be able to predict much, but I think a lot of changes is going to happen, and we'll have to just wait and watch.
That's a sea change, Sarila. That's a sea change
Yeah,
of things that's going to happen, and it's going to get tougher and tougher. And as you said earlier, if you're not a learner, I think this will
yeah,
ensure that,
we'll lose out. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to lose out big. Now that we're talking about the future, okay, I want to look at it from the perspective of students who've just graduated. That's the 2020 batch who've just come out. Of course, there are people who are still writing their exams, but eventually
Right.
they'll get their results. Uh, from their perspective and from a PR professional perspective, those who are there in this industry for the last 2-3 years, okay, freshers basically. What is your advice to them from a student perspective and from a fresher perspective?
Perspective. Okay. See, from a student perspective, I don't know if whether it's a present context or anything. I think for any job, for that perspective, from that point, I would say have the right attitude. Be a learner. Always be a learner, right? uh, Irrespective of where you land up, whether in a big agency or a small agency, be open to taking up things, taking initiative, learning as much as you can. Okay, the first 1 year is what you need to give yourself to learn all the basics of what there is to be from a PR point of view, right? And and considering that the PR world is moved on from what it was earlier, you need to also know the basics of social media in terms of whether it is social media in terms of news, or it is social media in terms of creative campaigns, or it is your digital marketing campaigns and things like that. uh, I think it's very important that you need to know all of this, because I think now when any agency is going to hire you, these are things that will come up in your interview, right? Do you have knowledge about this, right? And also read up in terms of on various case studies. That is, I mean, now Google is there. It just Google any of the various case studies that you require in terms of crisis management. I feel with the world going forward as it is, um, as you know, maybe last 4 5 years or maybe less than that, I think, I don't know, fake news is one big thing, right? Fake news is like, yeah. So if you are able to get some kind of a specialization in understanding that part, is also, I think that's a future. I think everybody will require, because fake news affects everybody. It need not be only political parties or artists or individuals. It affects each and every brand, everything, right? So that is one area that you also, that I will say that the people who are entering into this industry need to be aware of, because it it can make or break a brand, right? It's very important. So if you can learn skills, right? I think there are so many platforms now to identify that these are things, these are specialized skills which you can sell yourself when you're actually going for an interview, right? So these are things I would say that you need to understand and know. Of course, your writing, your presentation skills, all that definitely is there, but I think anything, all this will be a value add for you going forward. Yes.
I'm assuming it's the same for the PR professionals as well, your advices, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Perfect. Ah, that's quite a challenging thing to do. because you are a seasoned professional, you find this like, yeah, I mean, everyday stuff that you need to learn. But for somebody who's entering the field new, I think these are quite a bit of skills that
Yeah,
needs to
maybe
be
it is
learned.
intimidating. Yeah, so I think they should just keep an open mind for the first year and not think of jumping soon after somebody else offers them something. Yeah.
I understand the attrition bit. Saleela, I think we've covered the students and the PR professionals, but what is your advice for people who are looking at PR newly? From this time onwards, the last 3 months, who have never done PR in their life, who have never done media relations. Maybe they've touched upon a little bit of digital media and social media, but as brands, organizations, or companies who are just opening to maybe the newspapers should cover us, what is your advice to them?
For company, you're talking about companies who have never done PR and getting into it
Yes,
now.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
There are a lot of people, presently, we've also got companies which have just launched their services now during this pandemic time, right? So you even if you want to do a big launches and talk to media about it, media is not probably interested to cover at this point, right? So it has to be balanced, right? I think take it slow for the first 3 months in terms of understanding. Put this time, I would say, for the PR agencies who have been approached by these brands, take this time to build great content for your clients during this time, right? You have the time. Of course, I'm not saying that you don't go to the media with these. There are publications who need to see some kind of a positive glimmer of hope or anything, right, in these dark times. So if it is anything related and can be taken up by media, they do take it up. So if there is any positive story that we can actually come up with from these brands, identify the publications and go forward. But otherwise, use this time to build the right amount of contact, the right kind of content. Understand the consumers, okay? Talk to them through various channels that you can use. Of course, social media is there. So understand your consumers much better. Maybe you can do some research or audits or something like that to see how your brands will be perceived, your products will be perceived, and launch it at the right appropriate time. That's what I would say at this time. Yeah.
Patience is the key. Okay. Thank you so much for this, Saleela. I think with that, we come to the end of this episode. I have loved this conversation, just like every time I meet you and we have conversations about these things and what happens.
Thank you
I
so much.
think I've totally loved this. I mean, it almost looks like a dinner chat.
Yeah, it's almost dinner time, I guess, now.
Yes. So I'm so glad. I'm so glad we did this. So thank you so much for your time and efforts for this lovely conversation. And I do hope to keep in touch for more such conversations.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. I hope I made some sense to your viewers, and they'll be able to learn something. Yeah, I hope.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. And for those of you who
Thank
are
you.
watching us, thank you for watching this episode. I'm sure you have an opinion on our conversation today. So all you need to do is leave your opinion or questions if you have any in the comment section, and I'll pick it up from there. And if you have questions for Saleela, please send it over because I'm going to send it to Saleela and she's going to answer that for us. Okay, and if you want to be a part of these series, then please be active on my Facebook page and my LinkedIn page, and of course my YouTube channel. This way, one is you get to know the tone of the show, and as long as you have something new, I'm happy to have you on my show. So if you want to get in touch with me, I'm available on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all as Consult Manasi. My email ID is consultmanasi@gmail.com. That's consultmanasi@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you.